To have a technical engineer.
Okay, I'm here today with Janet Hudson, a dear friend of mine, and we're here today to talk about healthy relationships and what has made our friendship a solid and really life-giving, supportive friendship. So, Janet, welcome, and I'll give you the opportunity just to introduce yourself and tell them about you a little bit.
Thank you, Vicki. Janet Hudson. I'm a coach, and my business is all about taming your inner chaos. And I feel like this is an amazing privilege today to actually get to talk about something that's so deeply meaningful, and that is our friendship together, Vicki.
Wow, it has been meaningful, Janet. I mean, we neither one of us could have imagined the friendship that was going to emerge when we met
Mhm.
4.5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah. So we met at a coach training class. So the class where we both went to get certified
Mhm.
for our life and business coaching. And so I remember you being in the class and you were like kind of like this quiet person. I remember I invited you to lunch and you said, no, no, thank you. I've got my own, I have plans. And so it was interesting. Like, what do you remember from that week of initial connections?
Um, I remember you as being very high energy, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can rise up to that level of energy. And I remember, okay, I've just got to, and what I did was just take a walk by myself. So I think it was the needing to ease into this, feeling exhausted from the actual time that we were spent learning. So I
Right,
had
'cause
to had to recover during our breaks. But yeah, I thought it's one of those things. Looking back, I can see the ways that you reached out that were, and it's a mark of how much I've grown. But it's like, okay, like that. I wasn't really. How do I meet that? Like, what is she wanting from me? Why is somebody? Why is somebody reaching out to me?
what's
That's
suspicious? What's
suspicion.
your motive for
That's
this?
right. Exactly. Super analyzing it.
And funny, I think one of our first practice coaching conversations in the class was with each other,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is kind of funny to look back on. I was complaining about my dogs in that
Your
coaching
dogs, yeah.
conversation. So, what what do you remember about what unfolded next? We were together for a week in that class and then we went our separate ways. And what do you remember about how we connected next?
Well, again, I think it was your initiative. You reached out and said that there was someone else in the class. Could we get together? And it was so funny because you said we're going to meet on Zoom by video. And I was terrified of that because it's like, oh no, I've got to be on video with people on the computer. And I remember what a high level of anxiety that felt. And now it's sort of just like something you do constantly. But like, okay, I'm going to do it. I really need to practice. I need to commit to this. And I think we started meeting with the three of us only a couple of weeks, and then the other person just sort of, it didn't work out. And you and I just, we just kept it up and kept it up. And it got to be so meaningful very quickly. That awkwardness, that uncertainty disappeared in no time. And I remember that was all on my part.
Well, we were establishing a new friendship, and a lot of what we were talking about in the beginning was around developing our businesses, around learning our coaching skills. But I remember one of the things that we made the commitment to very early on was to meet every week for an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And that felt it, as I mentioned, the meeting by video felt scary to me, but it was that commitment. And very quickly, I could sense the benefit of this. And hey, we're making these commitments to each other. We're both at a space where we're trying to grow our business and learn our skills. So it felt like, oh, yeah, this is like an accountability partnership and a form of inspiration, someone to brainstorm with. So it was serving multiple purposes.
Yes, it was. So, and here's let's explore a little bit. Like we made that commitment to meet together. And how did that time and like how we intentionally structured that time, how do you feel like that piece of it helped us to grow our friendship?
Well, I think that was vital because we're touching base every week, so we never developed too much distance. And yet it was heavily focused. You know, we had an intention. It was about business, but then I think we began to share our vulnerabilities around our businesses, share our questions, even our own doubts. Because at first it's like, okay, I've got to make sure I'm always in my best self when I'm with this person. But over time, you sense that it's safe, that you can show more and more of your authentic self.
Which we've done over the years, right?
Yes,
I
that's
think as
right.
we've grown, there's probably no part of each other that we haven't seen.
That's right, exactly. But it takes time to feel that safety.
It does. Yes.
And you know, sometimes that happens quicker than others, but yes.
Well, and the other curious thing was when we met, we always made sure and provided intentional time for each of us. Like as a general rule, you know, you kind of have 30 minutes, I kind of have 30 minutes. Now, some weeks I need 50 minutes and you get 10, and some weeks you need 45 minutes and I get 15. So it's really worked well, but having that, I think that's one of the things I see in so many other people who complain about not having good friendships is like one person totally dominates and takes up the space and never intentionally allows space for the other person. So what's your insight on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That intention to share time, but yet not making it a rule. And by making it an intention, that I think it gave us each that like wanting to come with something to share, and yet always coming with a sense of curiosity about the other person, a sense of not only what I want to share, but what I want to learn from what you have been doing during the week. So you're right, a small piece of structure that you can be flexible with makes a big difference.
Yes, it's made a big difference in feeling like for me, like I always have a safe place to be heard. And I think what's really curious about the relationship as it's unfolded is the weeks where I might need a little bit some more support. Maybe I'm having something emotional or something I'm really working through. Like you are like strong and solid and there to help me through that. And the weeks that you're working through something, I'm in a more stronger, solid place. So it's this beautiful
Mhm.
relationship.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, over time, that grew that we developed different ways of communicating between our weekly meetings. And we've experimented with many different things, but it was a way in which, well, first let's use this app, and then let's use this app, and use this method. And so that began to be an enriching aspect, was how we shared between the sessions. And then the beginning to meet face to after having this very long-term virtual relationship.
Yes. So, okay. So let's talk about that first time that we met. Was it 3 summers ago? Or yes, it was
Yeah.
three
I
summers.
think it was after our 2 year, after not seeing each other for almost 2 years, I think we met. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, 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 that's right.
Yes. And so I flew down to North Carolina. Um, and I remember you picked me up at the airport and we went on this kind of mini retreat together, which was just fabulous. And also so interesting because we realized there was so many things that we didn't know about each other. You know, we had met every week consistently now for almost 2 years, but yet we didn't know, like, do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? Do you?
I know, I remember that. Oh, do you like this? It was like, you know, somebody so well, but you don't know like the most simple things about them that you might know about people that you have a much more superficial relationship with.
Yes, and we didn't know the backstories of each other's lives. And I feel like that I remember one specific trail. We were walking a trail around a lake, and I think I was sharing with you some really deep things that had happened on my journey. And then another moment where we were sitting in a brewery. We discovered we both love craft beers. And so we were sitting there, and I remember you intensely sharing, and just the incredible feeling it was to just get to know each other as these whole people, but yet to honor these really intense things that had happened in our lives.
Exactly. And even in our friendship, we're at different stages of our lives. You know, you're still in the active role of parenting, I having already had adult children, and then supporting each other through different things that emerged over time in our relationship. So it was interesting to, you don't always have to be at the same stage of life to have a very deep friendship.
Yes, that's a great point. And we've seen each other work through the challenges that we've faced in each of our own unique arenas. And the one thing I think that I really value about our friendship is when I come with a challenge that I'm working through, I know that you're not going to like get in the hole with me. If I'm in a black hole about something, I guess that's what I always think about, being in a bad space over something. You're not going to get like in that hole with me and stir around with me. You're going to actually like help me get up out of that. And I think that's a really big difference I see friendships where people are just together to commiserate with each other. And then our friendship, we're very, very intentionally here to grow each other.
Exactly. And I think it's that commitment to growth. And it doesn't mean that there haven't been times when each of us was not at our best selves, and we allowed room for that. But yet we didn't ever want to look back and feel like this sense of shame that, oh, wow, I can't believe that I use my time constantly to be in this deep place of complaining and all of this stuff. But yeah, that how to both commit to growing and support someone else on that same growth path, I think makes a big difference because we had that intention shared together.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a moment that, and I don't know that we've ever really discussed this moment before. So I'm kind of like throwing this in here, but there was a moment a couple summers ago where I I was dating a gentleman, and like you knew that one of my really strong heart's desires was to find this life partner. And you had kind of sat front seat on this. I mean, it was not a long dating journey, but maybe 2 months, and you'd kind of sat front seat. And I knew you were rooting for me so hard to have it work out. And then when it didn't, I just kind of like disconnected and walked away from it. And yet you were almost so disappointed for me that it didn't work out, that I think you were uncertain how to handle that. And I'm curious, what do you remember from that moment?
Yes, exactly. I think that that was one of those ways of maybe thinking that I knew what you wanted and I wanted you to get what you wanted, but there was a way in which that whole experience was serving something larger for you. And you came to that awareness quicker than I was able to. And I think it was that gap between how you were handling it and how I imagined you might handle it that really revealed that this relationship was serving a different purpose of your growth.
Yeah. And it was also in that moment when I realized how deeply you cared for me as a friend, that wow, you wanted this for me as much or more than I wanted it for myself. So that was so cool. But then let's also go to that when we had that little retreat in North Carolina, we left there making a commitment to each other that really, I think, changed each of our lives. And you initiated that challenge. So yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I think that I had been deeply influenced by this young woman and her podcast, Just Lively. And she was in this era of living by flow with intention, taking very seriously this idea of allowing the universe to guide you in your life. And that spoke to me so much, but I was like, what would that look like? And we talked about that, and you said, I think I need to do that as well. And so we committed to, like, what if we will let go of all of this headspace analysis, and what if we just allow this our intuitive guidance in us, this larger part of ourselves, this authentic part of ourselves, what if we lean into and allow that to guide us? And yes, that was a deeply, deeply meaningful turning point for both of us.
Yeah. So we are like 2.5 years past that now. And like, what do you feel the outcome of that has been for you?
I would say it's been transformational, and it's gone through several layers of that. Like, I can see now how naive I was. That's been more than 2 years ago, like what that might mean, because it had to go in a way to yet open up more doors that would lead to open up more doors. So there was more learning I needed to do. But now I'm in a place where I think I much more deeply get what I was committing to than I did then, but would never have gone on that journey probably had I not felt like somebody else was going on it as well. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that first year after that, it's what led me to make the commitment to walk away from my job.
Mhm.
And that's something that I had been wanting to do, preparing to do, but yet just hadn't had the courage, or everything just hadn't aligned for me to be ready to do it. And I'm not sure if I would have had the courage to do it then if we weren't so committed. We're like, we're committed to, if we hear this, then to act and follow through. And so that it drastically shaped my life. And I think I agree with you. Like, I didn't have any idea how much impact or influence that would have in the layers of learning to do that. Because as I look back, it was really easy for me to sit on my deck, having all my resources and foundations planned out to walk away from my job. It was very easy to follow that intuitive guidance. But as you know, as our journeys have unfolded, some of the intuitive guidance we've received, like for me, there's not as much like safety net underneath it. And that's kind of like, was easy in hindsight to make that intuitive decision. But I feel the exact same way as you, that if I hadn't been able to listen in that moment, it would not have opened the doors for me to be able to listen in the moments where the safety net really isn't there as much.
Exactly, because it is in many ways the language I would use. It's like a faith journey. It's not something that's going to reveal a lot of other steps down the road until you take these initial steps. And I think that that's where it is, dare we say, a little bit scary, uncertain, or exciting.
Yes. Oh, yes. I think that I've learned that the intuition is more like the eyes of the soul, that it kind of see ahead of us where we can't see with our physical eyes. Mm-hmm. And that's really part of the journey that we've been on together, is this deep transformational spiritual journey that where we're really committed to staying present, to honoring the unfolding of what comes next, and to facing the fears that come up. And we've faced those fears and held space for each other to face those fears, and yet been the light that keeps pulling each other forward to not get stuck in a fear. And so I'm curious, how do you see that piece of our friendship?
Oh, I mean, absolutely essential. I think it felt like it's a type of support that I don't really have in other aspects of my life, a resource for both knowledge and then a reassurance when you are, and there's somebody else who's gone through a similar thing. And it's amazing how many times we'll talk to each other and describe a challenge we're facing, and you're saying, oh my gosh, it's just like you're describing what's going on with me. And so that at times we're in different place, and at times it connects. And so the overlapping, the comfort that comes from hearing somebody else, and then the encouragement. So vital, absolutely vital.
Yeah. And I think also we've introduced each other to different teachers on our journey. You know, you introduced me to Jess Lively, the podcast that you mentioned earlier. I think maybe I introduced you to Michael Singer. I think maybe you introduced me to Eckhart Tolle, although we all had probably, we as we discussed this just last week, we each had an exposure to Eckhart, but it didn't make sense
Initially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And today I love this. We're in this space where, you know, the last maybe 8 to 10 weeks, we've really swapped more messages, voice messages, even on a daily basis. That's really been cool. Like I joked with you last week, like we need to be recording these because someday we're going to publish the life and times of Janet and Vicki's awakening journey. So if there is a woman listening to us today and she hears what we've talked or have said about friendship and relationships, and she wants to create this in her own life, but she has no idea, like she doesn't feel like she has any solid relationships around her, what advice would you give her and where would you tell her to start?
Well, as we've said, this is the depth of our relationship now unfolded over time. So I'd say patience is always important, and to lower expectations. I think there's an irony between, oftentimes we want something and we go looking for it, and we can be a little overpowering and intimidating to people. But I would say, think about what you want in a friendship and then begin giving that to others. And as you give what you want and don't expect that in return, it's amazing how many times that's what's going to come to you, but it'll come to you in unexpected ways. So it is this great irony of giving what you want, being cautious about your expectations. I would say lowering those expectations, and yet, of course, setting for yourself healthy boundaries. And I think that will attract exactly what you're looking for.
So when you look at kind of the 3 or 4 keys that from your perspective has made our friendship grow, what are those things?
Okay, you cut out, so I didn't quite hear that question.
Okay, the 3 or 4 key things that have really allowed our friendship to grow.
Okay. Well, one, I think we haven't put a lot of expectations on each other. I think we never, we don't put great time demand expectations on each other. We never come expecting each other to solve the other person's problems. We come with a shared intention to support, but never the expectation that someone else is going to do heavy lifting for us. And I think by not putting a lot of specific expectations on each other, it's allowed that friendship to expand and grow in a lot of different ways. And then respecting our differences, because we are We're at a different stage of life. We're different parts of the country. We're just different in many ways. And I think we have always respected that difference in each other.
Yes.
How about you?
Yeah. Well, I think that unconditional acceptance is something that's been important to me. I know that you're going to accept me whether I show up in tears or whether I show up having the best day ever. And I also think that having this balance of giving and taking, or giving and receiving, let's put it that way, where we each respect that there's times that we need to give and there's times that we need to receive. And I think that's a space where a lot of friendships get out of balance, and then people feel taken advantage of, where one person is always giving and one person is always receiving, or taking, maybe in that case. And so that's something that's just been created a very, very healthy space for me in our friendship. And then consistency. I think that this consistency of just always knowing, now where we're at in, we're 1 hour apart time zone from each other, and I stay up a little bit later. You're probably up a little bit earlier. So I quite often know that, I might have a message for you and from you in the morning when I get up. And, I know that if I'm sending a message late at night, you're probably listening to it when you're out on your walk in the morning. And those things that just become this like secret sauce that makes this friendship special. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I agree with you about consistency. I think that that is important, because I think oftentimes you can have an intense relationship with someone, and if you don't nurture it, if you don't tend to it, over time it just weakens. And an hour a week is not a big amount of time, but over 4 years, an hour of a week, it's amazing what it has produced. It's the quality of it. You could not come nowhere close to thinking about what that might be, given the time investment.
Yes. And we've been creative. We've had virtual happy hour together to
That's right.
celebrate some things. And yet, I have many friends in my local geographic area that I'm physically closer to that I don't feel nearly as close to, just because we don't have that consistency of time that we meet together. So, Janet, is there any other wise words of wisdom that you would like to share before we wind out today?
Well, I think I pretty much said what I wanted to say, and I'll just end it by saying that when I met you, I was in the early stages of beginning a journey of a new relationship with my adult children, and the guiding mantra for the meditations, and I've seen the transformational power that has had, and I
Can I
think that
stop you
has
just a
helped me
second,
bring
Janet?
that. Sure, yeah.
The internet cut out just a little bit. So can you go back to where you said a guiding mantra?
Okay, yeah. Has been the gift of no expectations. And because I've seen that have a transformative effect on those two relationships, it's really encouraged me to bring that into many other relationships. And I've noticed that sometimes having very specific expectations of people sometimes can stifle a relationship.
Yes, and that is something that I really embrace. There's a book called The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz, and that helped me at the beginning of this year really embrace that at a new level, especially in dating and partnership relationships. So, yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. So, okay. Well, I look forward to the next time that you stop by for a visit. And until then, thank you for being here today. And I look forward to chatting again soon.
Okay. Bye, Vicki. Take care.